Imagine spending 6 years building a video game. Hundreds of developers working late nights, artists creating massive worlds from scratch, programmers fixing thousands of bugs, writers building stories, musicians composing soundtracks, marketing teams spending millions trying to make sure people even notice the game exists. And then, on release day, millions of people download it for free, no payment, no revenue, no return on investment. Piracy has existed for decades, from burned CDs to torrent websites to illegal streaming platforms. Piracy has become part of internet culture itself. Some people see it as harmless, others see it as theft. But regardless of your opinion, one thing is undeniable. Piracy has a massive economic impact on the entertainment industry. And today, we're breaking down exactly how pirating games, movies, and TV shows quietly costs companies billions of dollars every year, while also changing the future of entertainment itself. Because this topic is a lot more complicated than most people think. Before talking about the money companies lose, we first need to understand something important. Why do people pirate in the first place? Because contrary to what corporations sometimes say, most pirates are not criminal masterminds trying to destroy the entertainment industry. In many cases, they're just normal people dealing with expensive products, limited access, or frustrating services. Let's start with gaming. Modern AAA games now cost around $70. And that's before DLCs, expansions, battle passes, cosmetic packs, or microtransactions. For someone living in a developed country, $70 is already expensive. But for someone living in countries with weaker currencies or lower wages, that same game can represent weeks of income. Now think about streaming. Years ago, streaming was simple. You paid for Netflix, and you got almost everything. But today, a single person may need Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Hulu, Prime Video, Paramount Plus, Spotify, and more, just to watch the shows and movies they like. This created something called subscription fatigue. People became overwhelmed with monthly payments, and piracy became the all-in-one solution again. Then there's availability. Sometimes movies or shows simply aren't accessible in certain countries. Sometimes older games are impossible to buy legally anymore. And ironically, piracy often becomes the easiest way to preserve media that companies themselves abandoned. This is why many people defend piracy. They argue that piracy is often a service problem, not just a pricing problem. And honestly, there's truth to that. But even if piracy is understandable, it still creates huge financial consequences. Most people completely underestimate how expensive modern games are to create. A massive AAA game today can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. You need developers, writers, animators, voice actors, marketing campaigns, sound designers, servers, testing teams. And development can take anywhere from 4 to 8 years. That means companies are spending money for years before earning a single dollar back. Now imagine this situation. A company spends $250 million making a game, but millions of people pirate it instead of buying it through it. Suddenly revenue projections collapse. And when that happens, studios start panicking. Because publicly traded companies answer to investors. Investors expect growth. And if growth slows down, cuts begin, layoffs happen, budgets shrink, studios close, and piracy affects smaller studios even more. A giant corporation might survive losses, but an indie studio may spend years building one game. If that game gets heavily pirated before enough sales come in, the studio may never recover financially. And that risk changes how games are designed. Companies become safer, less experimental, more repetitive. And ironically, piracy may partially contribute to the exact corporate behavior gamers complain about most. Microtransactions, battle passes, aggressive monetization, always online DRM, because companies are constantly searching for ways to guarantee revenue. Gaming companies didn't just sit back and accept piracy, they fought back. One of the biggest responses was DRM, digital rights management. Basically, software designed to prevent piracy. Some games require constant internet connections, some use launchers, some verify files online. And then there's Denuvo, one of the most controversial anti-piracy systems in gaming. Supporters say it protects sales during the launch. Critics say it hurts performance and punishes legitimate buyers. And this creates a strange situation. Paying customers sometimes get a worse experience than pirates. Now, companies also shifted heavily toward live service models. Think about games like Fortnite, Valorant, or Warzone. These games make money continuously through cosmetics and battle passes. and piracy becomes less relevant because the real product is the online service itself. In a weird way, piracy indirectly pushed the gaming industry towards subscriptions, online ecosystems, and microtransactions. Now let's move to movies and television. Piracy here is even bigger. Illegal streaming websites attract billions of visits every year, and unlike games, movies spread across the internet almost instantly. A movie releases in theaters, and within hours, pirated versions appear online. For studios, this is a nightmare because movies rely heavily on launch momentum. The first few weeks matter enormously. That's when studios recover production and marketing costs. And remember, blockbuster movies can cost insane amounts of money, sometimes over $300 million, including marketing. Now, piracy affects more than just ticket sales. It also impacts streaming subscriptions, advertising revenue, digital purchases, and licensing deals. And companies notice these losses. So what do? They raise prices. Streaming prices increase. Ads become more aggressive. Password sharing gets restricted. And platforms become more desperate for profit. At the same time, studios become less willing to take creative risks. That's why we constantly see sequels, remakes, and franchise movies. Companies prefer safe investments because when profits are uncertain, risk becomes dangerous. Now, here's the biggest debate of all. Does piracy actually reduce sales? Because economists and researchers have argued about this for years. Some studies suggest piracy significantly hurts revenue. Others suggest the impact is smaller than companies claim. And some even argue piracy can increase popularity. For example, a person who pirates a game may later buy merchandise, DLCs, sequels, or recommend the game to friends. And not every pirated copy equals a lost sale, because if someone was never going to buy the product anyway, did the company truly lose money? That question changes everything. Still, even if only a fraction of pirates would have purchased illegally, is the numbers are massive enough to matter globally. One of the most famous quotes about piracy came from Gabe Newell, the co-founder of Valve. He said, "Piracy is almost always a service problem." And honestly, that statement changed how many people view piracy. Because when services become convenient and affordable, piracy often decreases naturally. Think about Spotify. Before music streaming became popular, music piracy was everywhere. But once Spotify made music cheap, fast, and convenient, millions of people switched to legal streaming. The same thing initially happened with Netflix. But once content became fragmented across dozens of platforms, piracy surged again. This teaches us something important. People often prefer convenience over piracy. Most people would rather use a simple legal platform if the pricing and accessibility make sense. Now let's talk morality. Because this debate gets emotional very quickly, some people believe piracy is straightforward theft. Their argument is simple. If someone creates something and you consume it without paying, that's stealing, especially when independent creators are involved. But others argue digital piracy is different from physical theft because copying a file doesn't remove the original. And this creates a moral gray area. Then there's the argument about corporations. Some people feel less guilty pirating from giant billion-dollar companies, especially when those companies use aggressive monetization. But here's the problem. The people affected are not always executives. Sometimes it's developers, artists, animators, editors, writers. Regular employees can still suffer when projects fail financially. So the morality becomes complicated. And that's why this topic remains so divisive online. At the end of the day, piracy is not a simple issue. It's not just a pirate's bad or corporations greedy. Okay, reality is more complicated. Yes, piracy absolutely costs companies billions of dollars. It affects game studios, movie companies, streaming platforms, developers, employees, and those financial pressures shape the entertainment industry we experience every day. But at the same time, piracy also exposes weaknesses in pricing, accessibility, and service quality. And history has shown that consumers are willing to pay when companies make the experience worth paying for. So maybe the real question isn't how do we eliminate piracy? Maybe the real question is how do you make illegal entertainment better than piracy? Because in the digital age, convenience may matter more than enforcement. And that battle is still happening right now. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe.